I believe that we stand on the verge of a historic moment.
You ask them what it is about rock and roll music that they like, and the first thing they'll say is the beat, the beat, the beat.
I found pardon for my past, power for the present, bright prospect for the future.
If you talk to the average teenager of today, I know what it does to you.
That could have an unparalleled and unprecedented impact.
I've got a story to tell. Have you?
Most of us can't remember a time or even the last time that a student didn't have their phone in hand. Screens follow them from the classroom to the dinner table and sometimes even into small group. In fact, most times into small group. Technology's not the enemy, but it's kind of a neutral thing that we've got to learn to deal with one way or the other. It shapes how our students think, how they connect, and even how they believe. So how we use it, and if we use it wisely in ministry, is an incredibly important and poignant question right now. So today in our podcast, John Oliver is not with us this week, but I'll tell you who is, our partner from Student Ministry Matters, Dan Carson. And we're going to talk about navigating technology in student ministry, the good, the bad, and the hopeful, and everything in between.
Well, Ian, that is much better than where my brain went. I always think of the good, bad, and the ugly.
Ugly.
And the ugly. And well, you mentioned that you can't remember a time when the student didn't have his phone in hand in one place or another. I can. I'm that old.
Fair. I remember as a student when I didn't have one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to, I guess it's been about 20 years, so maybe kids had flip phones still, but yeah, it is. It's been a while. What are your reflections on that? How has that impacted and changed since you look over your tenure in ministry?
It has been it's been a big thing. I remember going into one of my more recent churches back in 2007. And my sister-in-law told me, because she had been working with students a little bit at her church, she said, you're going to have to get on this Facebook thing. And I thought, what is Facebook? And I thought, okay, so I hopped on, and then I was communicating with students via Facebook. Now, that was a step above MySpace for the really old guys out there.
I remember MySpace.
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake bought it several years back and spent like $40 million on it or something like. I mean, it was. I don't know. Don't fact check this, but it was a massive, like tens of millions of dollars, and he was going to bring MySpace back, and nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened, and I know why. Bad. Facebook was again kind of game changing because you could see what not your parents, but what the students were thinking at that point, because they were on there and they shared all sorts of stuff that they shouldn't have. It was just blah, the emotions, the pain, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You would see it all on there. But I think with the phone thing, that has been a strange journey. It wasn't really till the iPhone kind of kicked in that it became a big issue. Again, back in 2007, during that period, I had students who were texting all the time. In fact, they would text one another during youth group, or they would text one another they would be in the same van on a youth trip.
And you could do it with one hand. Like you could do it without looking. And so I remember in college we'd go, and we'd, text it. But yeah, now you can't do that anymore.
No, too complicated. There has been, especially over these last several years, this point of distraction that's kind of pulled away from whatever's happening on stage or whatever's happening in the group with your students. And so it can be frustrating, but it is a part of our culture that we have to figure out what to do with.
No, you're 100% right. And I don't know if most of our viewers and our people, and I got to watch the clock because we're on a different program doing our stuff. All right, we're going to be 20 minutes and then we'll go to our behind the wall. But I don't know if many people here know this about you, but and we have not. We're telling more and more people. I know you've been telling your people, but Student Ministry Matters is an official partner of Shaping Student Ministry, and so. If it's whether you're SSM or SMM, they really connect and go together. But I have loved, just in the short time we've been able to partner together, we've already been able to do, you invited me down to lead a breakout at your student workers retreat. And this was kind of the focus, was technology and how it affects our students. It was a really great day to go down and do all of that. And so I think it's kind of is the perfect topic because we both kind of been immersed in it more than just using technology. We've been immersed in helping others see it. And I as I look at it, I did a breakout and I thought it was funny because it absolutely, cell phones were the devil when they first came out. I mean, they were convenient, but we found a way to make them the devil. And then, something else comes out and it's the devil. And so now, and we kind of even look at it, whether it's AI, and we're kind of seeing that cell phones can be the devil a little bit, but like AI now is the next thing that's the devil. And I thought it was funny. You've seen my slide deck that we sent out. And we have an ebook coming out on SSM for this and sending it to you as well for your people that we turned our breakout into one. But I thought this was funny. You've seen this, so maybe it's not fair, but I want to ask you. I kind of bait and switched some of our people on it because you've got the guy. I think it's crazy in this time of day. And if you listen to us and you're this person, just keep listening. But it blows my mind that there is still a King James only faction in the world. Or as they've tempered it to King James preferred. And I think it's okay that you read it. I just think it's funny that people get so angry about things like that. And they'll be like, no, just this translation. And, and I'm over here just trying to figure out if my kids will understand the NLT. So either way, I kind of gave this breakdown for them. And I said, can you match? And I bait and switched them, and I was kind of rude. But I asked them if I could, and I won't bait and switch you. I want to see if you know what this technology is. But these were the objections to different technologies through the ages. And I think it's funny because I told them, can you match this to a different AI platform that people have talked about it and said this about it? And it really confused all of them. Like they had real guesses and went, oh yeah, I've heard that. But the first one was, it will ruin family life and destroy the art of conversation. Do you know what technology that was said about?
My initial thought is TV, but it might have even been radio.
It was the telephone in 1926.
Oh, the telephone.
I know, like you don't expect that. We've got the telephone, and then here's another one. It'll destroy creativity by giving people prepackaged ideas instead of making them think.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Which one was that?
Prepackaged ideas. Well, we went old school with the phone. How about the newspaper?
That's the television.
Oh, the television.
It is catching you back and forth. It's funny. This one was, it'll create lazy minds and weaken our ability to remember important things. What was that one about?
Wow. That's got to be a book.
It is the printing press and
the printing 1500s. Press. Okay.
And so, and then you can say like, this will make people abandon healthy living. That was the microwave in the 1970s. And then it will spread falsehoods and heresies faster than truth can keep up. That was the printing press too. And that was the Reformation argument. But to your point, in the 1700s in France, they argued that if you did read magazines, periodicals, and papers, it would isolate you. And what I think is so crazy is you look at, that's the response for people out there that all these technologies over the ages, we could just copy and paste these to today, and we're saying the same things. And yet, how many of us desperately wish that our students and families would read books? Like we wish they would answer a call, or we've needed to use a microwave, or any of those things. And I find it interesting because if you're listening to this, you're at least technological enough to get on YouTube or to download a podcast. But the question is kind of, and I'm interested to hear what you think, especially after we spent all that time together, how do we as Christians, what's the best way to approach and navigate technology? Because it's not going away. There's some definite evils about it, but then at the same time, we have more good that we can do now on a widespread scale than we've probably ever had. But what have you seen as some of the best ways to navigate that?
Well, that's hard. I mean, especially when you consider technology isn't something that we can get away from at all.
Right.
And it's been beneficial to the gospel. I mean, we talk about the printing press and how the Bible is made available to more people than ever before. And then our speaker talked about how when they were talking about creating the app store, they created the Bible app and they just gave it away. Man, the gospel has been spread among the nations in a way that never could have been before because of technology. But then you have the downsides. You have the hard things where your child, your student, the person that you care about is completely enamored with the phone. In recent months, I've gotten caught up watching body cam footage.
Wait, police body cam footage?
Yes, yes.
I do that at night when when my wife is asleep and I can't fall asleep. I was teased. That's my I guess my guilty pleasure is going, what police interactions can I watch?
That is because you think these people are so stupid. But kind of a common thread is, I need my phone. I need my phone. And it's like if they don't have it, they're missing an arm or a leg because one, they can't remember any numbers. They definitely need it for that purpose.
That's right.
But
That's right.
But that's kind of where they're at. Our speaker for the day gave us some really good things to think about, and he gave us some good takeaways. And maybe I could just share a couple of those because they were good. They were good things that we can all look at. Our speaker's name was Stephen Castleberry. He's the experienced pastor at a church outside of Austin, Antioch, Georgetown, Texas, which is just north there of Austin. But what he talked about were some things, including model godly behavior. As parents or as student leaders, we need to take the time to make sure that we're modeling it, that we're not hanging out on our phone, especially when we're at youth group and we got a group of students over there talking and we're just sitting there scrolling or on a trip. We need to interact with human beings and they need to see that. And then they know
the fire over in the corner of the house and you're home.
Exactly. Yeah. My house is on fire. I don't care. I'm watching Facebook, or I'm sorry, that made me old. Instagram, maybe a little bit, but TikTok. There we go. So
TikTok. I don't know. It's going to be banned next week, and then they're going to lift it again. But it's like Simon Sinek did a really great. The study is there that your phone, you feel the phantom vibrations, we hear the rings, or our phone does more now. We're so used to it, it does more away from us, and it gives us kind of that FOMO than we are when we're actually engaged with it. What is interesting to me, and Simon Sinek did this really good interview. I like Simon. I don't know if you have done much of his stuff, but I love him. Start with Why. We take when you do a cohort with us, the first book we walk through is Start with Why. And it's an excellent book, but he's written a lot of good stuff, just a leadership guy. But he just said, even the idea that we set our phones on the table while we're talking, just the presence of the phone, even if it's for our comfort, immediately signals to everyone that they're less important than whatever's on our phone. And I just thought, like that, I think about that now every time, and I just keep my phone sometimes it's a lot to be bulky in my pocket, and so but I'll put it in the seat so that people just can't see it. But it's interesting how much our phones control us.
Yeah. It is. I just thought about that. I just went to lunch with my wife before she took off on a trip yesterday morning. And what did I do? I set my phone out on the table.
Yeah.
Boy, that's convicting. So I don't want to think about that.
Well, I'll tell you what I have to do. What's been bad for me has been, and God has done a lot in me since this, but even responding to messages from people past 7 or 8 o'clock, like unless it's a friend or somebody I want to talk with, like I used to feel I'm at the mercy of everybody else. And I want to say it's a year because that doesn't sound as bad, but it was like months ago. I just went, I'm not doing it. If that person's messaging me, if they expect me to message them at 10 o'clock at night, then that's on them. And then I'll just follow them in the morning. But yeah, anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, that ties right into the second thing that he mentioned, was to set appropriate boundaries. I know of some families that'll actually have like a charging table. So before they go to bed, they'll just plug everything in there. They pick it up in the morning when they're done, but it helps for uninterrupted sleep and all sorts of other things that we might be thinking of. One of the things that's important for us as youth leaders, as people who work with students, is actually to teach discernment, not just phones are evil and bad and stick them in a drawer and never use them, because that was where I ended up. I remember in junior high, I went to a camp. Okay. So this was back in the dark ages, back in the old 1900s. I went to a camp. I came back and I was on fire for Jesus. And I had this mindset, I need to get these bad and evil things out of my life. So I took my TV out of my bedroom because that was evil. Yeah. I set it in the living room and said, I don't want it anymore.
Like a big furniture piece style TV. Did you get like the old TV from your house that they're like, we have this one in 1955. You can have this one now.
No, it's
the 80s.
I don't know if it's worse or better, but it had like 13 channels on it, and it was a dial, and it was black and white.
Well, that's not bad. We had an Emerson. We had a big Emerson, like I remember in the 90s, early 90s, a big old tube Emerson like furniture TV. I just think it's funny. TVs used to be part of your furniture selection.
They did, and that was what we had in the living room. But this was my little bedroom one, and so instead of doing that, it should have been. I should have gone, okay, what should I not be watching? What should I be investing my time in? And so there's some lessons that we can teach along the way. And that kind of ties in with the fourth big thing he had, which was teach students to guard their hearts.
Yes.
And that's huge. I mean, I think about the phones. I think about the struggles my own kids have gone through, and they've shared with me, but my students have shared with me. I mean, you walk around with, well, I hate to say it, but all the pornography you want just in your pocket. And you can just turn on and you can find it, and you can find it for free. Back in the olden days, the only way that you could get your hands on stuff like that was sneak a trip to a gas station or a bookstore that was willing to sell you something that maybe you looked old enough or not, or I mean, just all of these back alley type ways. Well, there's no struggle now. Now you pull up Instagram and you're flipping through, and you may see something you don't want to see, and in temptation that you don't want to see just from scrolling.
I saw something come up that I had to report for nudity that was just on Instagram, or like it was on Reels, and somebody hit like their pop. But I think that that's interesting that you say that, because I don't know if you've, with all of the Russia Ukraine conflict, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I probably this is more of a rough idea podcast, so we're just talking through this as we go, so I don't have all my citations sorted, but I do think I read a story, and if it's true, it makes a lot of sense, but it bolsters a bigger point, that so North Koreans don't really have the internet. They have a few sites they can look at. It's highly controlled, but North Korea sent troops over to help Russia at one point, and this has been in the last year, and they found that they had to disable the internet because North Koreans found pornography and just went crazy on it because they weren't allowed to see it, and it began hindering war operations, and which is kind of laughable to almost think about how crazy that is. Like, are you kidding me? But I think that it serves a bigger point, that, and this is something I talked about in my breakout, and we kind of talked through, but that everybody's worried about technology corrupting you. The truth is, what you just told me, back alley, finding what you needed, and kids have continued to, that we've always had this desire, but that technology doesn't affect your character. It magnifies it. Like, you're going to, it doesn't matter if you grow up if you're in North Korea and don't have the internet, they didn't see that and go, no. And this is that idea where it really matters for parents when you talk about setting the standard and setting boundaries. The worst students that I've ever seen, like when they leave and they go crazy, has been because we restrict them. Somebody restricts them and they try and keep them from something rather than teaching them how to navigate it. Yeah. And I think that rolls exactly what you're saying is, how do you, I think it's just not, and I was homeschooled growing up. So if that tells you anything, that they're usually the biggest bubblers. And so, but thankfully my family was not that way. And some things we were, but I think that there's that idea that believers should know. And here's, like, I see, this is kind of a smattering of stuff we talked about, but when it comes to AI is a really powerful tool that you can use as long as it's a tool. And then people will say, well, I don't know if my AI starts trying to write sermons. And I said, it's not going to write great sermons because I've tried it to see if it could actually do it. And so, and I know you say that, you got to give that caveat, but I've done enough training on it. We train our guys every cohort that we will write a sermon with them and they'll see, oh yeah, that's not really feasible. But outside of that, my thing is, we're asking questions about, is AI going to write my pastor's sermon? How many of us are asking the question, did my pastor just copy commentaries and just regurgitate commentaries to me this week? Because there's no difference in that. No, and so it's a repository. And so the idea is, it doesn't really affect it doesn't make you more holy or more lazy. What it does is it will amplify what is already in you. And I think it's interesting that throughout history, Socrates said, I talked about this a little bit, but Socrates refused to write anything because he believed that it was lazy and that it would lead to people that were knowledgeable but not wise. And so the funny thing is, we wouldn't even know anything about him if Plato hadn't have followed him around writing what he said, and people hadn't have been scribes. But that was his contention. And so in the ancient world, this idea of kind of writing and technology was kind of there was a gray area there. But when you look at John, when he's writing First John, you see a tension here of how believers deal with it, where he says, hey, there is so much I want to write to you, but I would rather be face to face with you. And so take the letter that I have written, and then I can't wait to see you and hold you. And like there's this idea where as believers, we look at it and say, yeah, technology is great for this, not so great for this. So we're going to act accordingly. I mean, and it doesn't take long in looking at the whole of Scripture. We start with the oral tradition, and then God says, by the way, Moses, write down the law. So technologically, he's cutting edge. Write it down on scrolls. Jeremiah, then God tells Jeremiah, copy it. And so all of Jeremiah 36 is, what is it? The king burns scrolls, and Jeremiah's like, I Xeroxed it. And then he moves off, like he's Xerox is an old term, but he's like, I got copies, bro. And so God's asking him to do that. But what is crazy is that the early church actually were early adopters of codices. And they were early adopters of books because they could sneak the gospel around in a book easier than in a scroll. And you see that all the way go up into, Gutenberg is a believer as far as we know. And he just said, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to take the Bible, and I'm going to press the Bible first. And it's just interesting. And to your point with the internet, so like their books hold unspeakable evil, but they also can hold the goodness of God because they're a tool that is neutral to the user's whims and character one way or the other. But I think that's big. You're talking about setting boundaries. I think that's so big for a lot of our students. And for me, I mean, that's a gut check for me. Also for your leaders, I think you should absolutely encourage your people to take selfies, to post about their kids and all that. But then you got to say, do you have the care? Because the idea is if you didn't have a phone, you'd probably just be grouping up with other adults and talking anyway. So, how are you pushing them towards that? I love that, man. It was a good weekend. I felt like overall, and I say overall like they were bad, but there wasn't a bad point that I saw. So it was just a good weekend. But I appreciated the forethought in looking at technology, because I think that the church for the last couple hundred years, it seems like has not been responded to change the way that I think God calls us to. I think God calls us to be bold people and to evaluate things. This is my big push, and then I'm done, and we can wrap up and then move to the second half. But I would tell you, the thing that I thought of is that it's never good to make a decision out of fear. Like in Scripture, you see that we should never make fearful decisions. Yeah. And that's just bad in life too, right? Like some of the worst decisions we ever make because we're afraid of something else. And then we end up, to quote the ever-present Kung Fu Panda, often people fulfill their own prophecies on the way to stop them. And so, fear is never a decision that we should use as a motivator. And that seems to be how we come to things. Always. Like we're afraid of what AI is going to do. We're afraid of what social media could do. But that's I think why Paul says to Timothy, God hasn't given you a spirit of fear. God's given you the Holy Spirit, which is of power and of love. And then he says of sound judgment. And I think Christians I think we're so often taught in Christian culture to be very weak and very weepy. And I think that we absolutely suffer, but I think it takes some grit to suffer. And it takes some grit we just need to bow our chests out and go, all right, whatever it is, it's not going to be any different than something that happened 1,000 years ago. And so I love that. Do you have what I want to talk about in this next half, behind the wall. So we want you to be able to, if you can, become a member. I literally heard from a guy last night that became a member of Shaping Student Ministry. And he told me within 10 minutes, I saw his name pop up and I knew who he was. And I said, hey man, welcome. And he said, this is amazing. There's so much stuff in here. and that's what, for $27 a month, or get 2 months for free and pay $270 for a year. We want you to be able to have the very best tools, to have the things that everybody needs, but it's hard to find, and to have a community, most importantly, of student pastors around you. I know it's Dan's heart. That's why we partner together. That's our heart. And so, listen, we want you to join it. And part of that is if you join, and just follow the link below, if you join up with us, then you will be able to see the second half of the podcast in the lobby. And so what we're going to talk about a little bit more about anxiety, and the anxious generation. Your wife led the most raved about small group, the breakout. Sorry. So I felt a little bit insecure because everybody's like, "Did you see the Anxious Generation breakout? It was amazing." And I went, "Man, I got to give away candy or something." So she
I think she did.
Well, never mind. But the content was so good, and I just heard all about it. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of the wall. So, Dan, this has been good. We'll see you guys on the other side. Click, follow a link. If not, listen, reach out to us. Talk about your biggest concerns about technology or anything that you want to let us know. You can even disagree with us. Just don't troll us, or we'll troll back. So we'll talk to y'all soon.